Questions without notice. The Leader of the Opposition.
My questions to the Prime Minister. Today Labor has 3 bills ready to implement recommendations of the Banking Royal Commission. When will the Prime Minister stop running a part-time parliament and schedule extra sitting days so Labor's bills can become law before the next election? Why is the Prime Minister putting the banks ahead of the people, just like he did when he voted against the Banking Royal Commission 26 times?
Prime Minister has a call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, I'll ask the Treasurer to add further to this answer. What the government is not going to do is engage in reckless legislation. We will engage in responding to all 76 of the recommendations of the Royal Commission, and we're going to do it in a measured way, consulting to ensure there are no unintended consequences, because our government doesn't engage in reckless legislation, Mr Speaker. Our government doesn't do that. What the Leader of the Labor Party did in this place last week was to engage in reckless legislation to undermine Australia's border protection regime. And we're already seeing the unintended consequences of it already, Mr Speaker. It's the Leader of the Labor Party who knows how to rush to failure, Mr Speaker, when it comes to bringing legislation in this place. He didn't think about it when it was voted on in the Senate. He didn't think about it here. He demonstrated his weakness, Mr Speaker, and the Leader of the Labor Party cannot be trusted with Australia's future.
The Treasurer.
Well, thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr Speaker. This is what a response to the Royal Commission looks like, Mr Speaker. Not a doorstop with a couple of suggestions,
Members on my left.
Speaker. The member for McMahon, the Leader of the Opposition, knowing that there were 76 recommendations, held a doorstop and announced part responses to how many?
6%.
5, Mr Speaker. A mere 6%. And the member for Hotham proudly went out on ABC radio and said that the Labor Party would provide a comprehensive response within a week, Mr Speaker. It's now 2 weeks
The member
later,
for Hotham.
and we have yet to see
Treasurer
a
will
response.
pause. The member for Hotham is now warned. I just wanted the Treasurer to pause because she was interjecting so loudly. I wasn't confident she'd heard me already call her to order on 2 or 3 occasions. The Treasurer has the call.
Now, Mr Speaker, the 76 recommendations, 40 of those will require legislation. And as the Leader of the Opposition knows, there's consultation papers, there's drafting instructions, there is a draft of the exposure draft of the legislation, and then it needs to be introduced, Mr Speaker. And none other than the Law Council of Australia said we must take the time to get this right, Mr Speaker. Now, the Labor Party have taken 2 weeks to get it wrong, Mr Speaker. They've taken 2 weeks to get it wrong. In the meantime, we've passed legislation through the Senate implementing 2 of the Hayne recommendations around trustees in super, Mr Speaker, and around inducing employers in super, Mr Speaker. We've also working with the Australian Financial Complaints Authority to ensure an expansion of their remit, and today I met with their CEO. The Minister for Agriculture is working on a national debt mediation scheme that will help rural communities. The Minister for Social Services, Mr Speaker, is working on a review of financial counselling, Mr Speaker. We have announced that Graham Samuel will chair an APRA capability review. We're getting on with it where the Labor Party is missing in action.